there might be some good news, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of this dark, gloomy tunnel that is the Gaza genocide. Pending. To be determined. And I add that on there because there is yet another ceasefire agreement that is upon us that has been proposed by the Trump administration. And the reason I add to be determined or pending is whether or not this follows through, whether or not Netanyahu confirms to abide to this ceasefire agreement, because every other time there has been a ceasefire agreement, Netanyahu and the Israelis and the IDF tend to have their own personal conversations to find ways to violate it and spin the narrative. They'll come up with shenanigans of, oh, we had to violate the ceasefire agreement because, Hamas is getting ready to attack again, so we got to attack first to stop them. You've heard this before, so we'll see. 18 times the charm, isn't that right? That's how the saying goes. But here, it looks a bit promising, according to the BBC. It says, Hamas says it agrees to release Israeli hostages, but seeks changes to U.S. Gaza peace plan. So this isn't part of the 21-point proposal that the Trump administration put out to Gaza, to Palestine, and to Israel on how to negotiate, how to deal with the settlement, how to deal with the kind of aftermath of this never-ending Gaza genocide. And a lot of it, granted, a lot of it is in the direction in favor of Israelis, but there is some provisions that actually goes against the Israelis' wishes, that they have to allow for the remaining Palestinians to remain in Palestine, which is directly, not in the interest of Israelis, especially the Zionists that facilitate themselves that they want Palestinians to not exist in Palestine. They want complete removal of any life of Palestine whatsoever in that area. So it's kind of come see, come saw on both sides. But just to read some of this here, it says, Hamas has agreed to release all the remaining Israeli hostages, but says it wants further negotiations on a number of key points outlined in the U.S. peace plan. In a statement, the group said it agreed to release all Israeli prisoners, both living and dead, according to the exchange formula contained in President Trump's proposal, if the proper conditions for the exchange are met. So meaning that the IDF and Israel cannot violate this peace agreement. Because what could happen is Netanyahu will continue to bomb or continue to attack Palestine while they're doing the hostage dealing, while they're dealing with negotiations, like we've seen numerous times before. And then Hamas would go back and say, well, listen, we're not gonna exchange. We're not gonna do this anymore. We're just gonna keep on attacking. So this is why this is all pending. But it appears to suggest it is seeking further negotiations on other issues regarding the future of Gaza and the rights of Palestinians, saying that they are still being discussed. The announcement came hours after U.S. President Donald Trump gave Hamas a Sunday deadline to accept the peace plan or face all hell. After Hamas submitted its response, Trump posted on Truth Social, I believe they are ready for a lasting peace. He called on Israel to immediately stop the bombing of Gaza so that we can get the hostages out safely and quickly, adding that we are ready in discussions on details to be worked out. So that's good, right? That's good, right? That was the whole kind of purpose that we were told, at least, that we're going to release the hostages, that we're there to, get the remaining people, both dead and alive, from captivity of Hamas, and same with the other side, that we're going to try to rescue the Palestinians that are kept in captivity by the IDF. So it seems good, right? You would think so, but again, this is all patent pending because of the fact that Netanyahu has had numerous ceasefire agreements on his head and has violated a lot of the contracts and a lot of the terms and negotiations that allowed for the return of the hostages. And that's why I've been saying for the longest time that none of this has to do with the hostages, that he'd rather see more and more people in captivity to prolong the efforts to further ignite more of this genocidal warfare against the Palestinians. It gives him purpose. If Hamas is agreeing to let the hostages go, then there's no point for Benjamin Netanyahu to do what he's doing. There's no point. So it would be in Hamas's interest. It'd be in Palestinian interest to go with this deal. Even if it's not in favor of them, just do it. Because otherwise, you're going to give Netanyahu more leverage to keep this war going. So here's Donald Trump on Truth Social mentioning about this. It says, I appreciate that Israel has temporarily stopped the bombing in order to give the hostage release and peace deal a chance to be completed. Hamas moved quickly or else all bets are off. And I should know about bets. I bankrupted a casino in Atlantic City. I will not tolerate delay, which many may think will happen, or any outcome where Gaza poses a threat again. Let's get this done fast. Everyone will be treated fairly. Because if you know about Donald Trump, he loves fairness. And of course, this message didn't go right to Israeli sources because they're still continuing on with certain bombing. Again, this is why this is all, pending. This is all, to be determined whether this fully enacts. We know that Hamas has stated that they're looking for negotiations. They had a negotiation summit in Qatar on September the 10th, the day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and Israel bombed the crap out of Qatar to prevent negotiations, to prevent the exchange of possible hostages. So again, none of this has to do with the hostages. None of this has to do with October 7th. This is all about facilitating Netanyahu's wants and desires to facilitate a ethnic cleansing of Palestine and Palestinians. He doesn't want a living soul to remain in Palestine. That's the whole purpose of all this. So Trump then fires back and says, there have been many positive discussions with Hamas and countries from all around the world, Arab, Muslim, and everyone else this weekend to release the hostages, end the war in Gaza, but more importantly, finally have long-sought peace in the Middle East. These talks have been very successful and proceeding rapidly. The technical teams will meet again Monday in Egypt to work through and clarify the details. I am told that the first phase should be completed this week, and I am asking everyone to move fast. I love his emphasis on moving fast. He's like Ricky Bobby. You ain't first, you're last. I will continue to monitor the centuries-old conflict. Time is of the essence, or massive bloodshed will follow, something that no one wants to see. Well, I wouldn't say no one, because there are very, very sick demonic beings out there that would definitely love to see more bloodshed continue. Again, the same people that want Ukraine to still continue on, even though they're down to their last, I don't know what the age range is for Ukraine. I think it was up to 60 because everyone else has died off. So there's a lot of people. There's a lot of sick people that would love to see more bloodshed. Here's Donald Trump again, kind of trolling Benjamin Netanyahu to get on this peace deal. So here he is, Truth Socialing. He posted a New York Times article of all sources. This is kind of interesting. So he posts New York Times, and it says, how fury over Israel's Qatar attack pushed Netanyahu on Gaza. So it's almost like he's trolling Bibi to get to this negotiation, to get to this peace deal. Because we know that Netanyahu is the ultimate hurdle in pulling out this peace deal. Netanyahu is the ultimate hurdle that could make and break this deal. So that's why Trump, it looks like he's trying to troll him in every which way, including using the New York Times to try to bait Netanyahu into submitting to this peace negotiation deal. But, of course, Bibi has other plans. And here is him. This is just after his trip in Washington, where he met with Donald Trump. He had a press conference there. And not even as he left Washington, he was still there. Just as he was leaving the White House with Donald Trump, this is him. immediately speaking on camera in Hebrew to try to trick out people. But this is him announcing that he's already thinking about violating cease agreement policies. Take a look at this. Let me turn this down a bit so people hear. So the reporter asked, Prime Minister, how do you sum up the visit? It was an excellent visit. At the beginning at the UN as well as the ending in Washington. This is my 4th visit to Washington since President Trump took office. This is a historic visit. Instead of Hamas isolating us, we turned the tables and isolated Hamas. Now the entire world, including the Arab and Muslim world, is pressuring Hamas to accept the terms we set together with President Trump to release all of our hostages, both living and deceased, while the IDF remains in most of our strip. So, this is one of the conflicts of interest when it comes to the peace agreement, is that the IDF is still going to remain in the Gaza Strip. There's still going to be a military force striking down on Palestinians. But the other part of the agreement is that the Palestinians cannot be forced out. The Palestinians are allowed to stay and exist within Gaza and the West Bank, that there's no annexation, which is not favorable for Netanyahu. But here he goes. So it says, who would have believed this? After all, people constantly say, you must accept Hamas's terms, get everyone out. The IDF should withdraw. Hamas can recover, and it could also rehabilitate the strip. No way that's not happening. On the contrary, and President Trump added that if Hamas refuses, he will give Israel full backing to complete the military operation and eliminate them. So that's the game. That's the game. Is that Netanyahu can turn this around, tell Donald Trump that, hey, we believe Hamas did not follow the terms and agreements of the ceasefire, and Donald Trump allowed Benjamin Netanyahu, if the agreement falls short, if Hamas violates it, to go full force, that there wouldn't be any more negotiations. So, Benjamin Netanyahu is already really revealing himself in the fact that he doesn't care about the hostages, he doesn't care about negotiations, that this is the tactic. He's hoping that there's a way to keep this war going. It was an excellent visit. So the reporter asked, Prime Minister, is there a question being asked? Did you agree to a Palestinian state? Absolutely not. It's also not written in the agreement, but what does it say? But there is one thing we did say, that we would strongly oppose a Palestinian state. President Trump also said he understands it. He also said at the UN it'd be a huge reward for terrorism and a danger to the state of Israel, and of course we won't agree to it. Which, I'm sorry, I gotta laugh at that when they, people say it's a reward for terrorism that you recommend a Palestinian state. You realize the president of Syria right now is a former Al-Qaeda leader. The guy who had a $10,000 bounty on him that soldiers have been fighting for 20 plus years to take down is now the president of Syria and shaking hands with CIA officials. So, talk about rewarding terrorism. You gave a terrorist leader the ability to control a country. And no one says boo about that. No one says a word about that. Oh, because he's on our side now. Oh, he works for us, so that's great. We're allowed to like terrorists if they're on our side, but not if they work against us or we fund them to manufacture war efforts so we can pretend that we're going to war with terrorists when we're actually fighting our own creation. That's what Hillary Clinton even admitted to in 2010. So, there's Netanyahu, the weasel, the demonic being that he is. I mean, even look at that face and tell me how disturbing that looks. Netanyahu already confirming that they're going to violate the ceasefire agreement. That there's no way we're going to allow Palestinians to exist in Palestine. There's no way we're going to confirm to any agreement that Hamas orchestrates that we're going to come up with some way to make it look like Hamas violated the terms agreement, even though we are the ones already admitting to this in Hebrew to try to trick people out, which is kind of hilarious because this is passed around all of social media and people are able to use AI and ChatGPT and Google Translate to figure out exactly what he's saying. So not kind of a good idea to announce this on camera where it's going to be shared across the internet. But that's what's happening, folks, and this is why it's such a touching issue on whether or not this agreement's going to follow through. So Donald Trump's still continuing, though, to pressure Netanyahu because he showed this image here. And that's a huge crowd of people. Now, where is that? Where is that, you might say? Is that Canada? Is that the United States? Is that maybe it's UK? Maybe it's Italy? They just had protests for the flotillas. Maybe it's Spain. No, it's actually Tel Aviv. So even within the state of Israel itself, they're against Netanyahu. And we've shown this before, that thousands upon thousands, over hundreds of thousands actually, of Israelis are protesting the Netanyahu government because they know how corrupted this guy is. Again, this guy, Netanyahu, is not only doing this to facilitate the, philosophy of the Greater Israeli Project and the Zionist movement, but he also has indictments on him. He has pending warrants and arrests that, if the war stops, could conflict him and they could actually arrest him and send him to prison for violating many, many crimes within Israel. So this is why he wants to keep this going, because he knows that he's in serious trouble, not just internationally, but within his own country. And the people of Israel are fed up with this. They're absolutely fed up with this. So that is a bunch of Israelis, ladies and gentlemen, protesting over this. Here's Megatron. It says, new massive protests erupt last night in Tel Aviv against Netanyahu. Israelis want Netanyahu to sign Trump's Gaza deal and end the war. It's now or never, they say. Donald Trump also shared the photo of the protests and supported them. So it seems like Trump is trying to pressure Netanyahu into signing this agreement to say, try to troll him to say, look, even your own people wants this peace deal. Are you going to violate your own people? Well, it turns out Netanyahu will do anything he wants because he's a sinister, demonic being. And that I wish that was a hyperbole. I wish I was making a joke about that, but that's the kind of person that would continue on a genocide when the entire world wants this to end. The entire world. The only people that actually want this are the brain-dead, cultish behaviors of bloodthirsty Zionists. They are the ones that want to continue this going because they are so dead-hoed onto the prophecy that they believed 2,000 years ago. They were told that this land was theirs and we could take over and, we're the superior being. And even the Christian Zionists, they wanted to use it for Jesus bait, that if we, clear out the land, that Jesus will come back at the time of the rapture. Those are the only people. And it's a very, very, very small percentage of the population, the world's population, that wants this to keep going. The rest of the world, with actual clear sense of conscience and the observation of all this, wants this to end. That the time is now. That the time to actually hammer out a possible peace deal is more than ever present. So here, I just want to show people, this is from the Economic Times. They did a little deep dive into this. Let's take a look.
Protesters in Tel Aviv took to the streets on Saturday, urging the government to seal the deal and end the war on Gaza and bring all the hostages home. Some Israeli protesters expressed worry about Israeli PM Benjamin Netanyahu, saying that he could sabotage the deal, as he did before, but also expressed hope that this time the deal will pass.
So we came here today because there are finally some very positive signs that a ceasefire will be signed and the hostage deal will take place, releasing the hostages and finishing the hostilities in Gaza. We know that President Trump has been pushing it. Unfortunately, knowing our Prime Minister Netanyahu, we are very worried that he will find a way to sabotage, like he did in the past 2 years already.
Hamas, the Palestinian militant group that controls Gaza, on Friday accepted certain key parts of the U.S. President Donald Trump's plan, including ending the war, Israel's withdrawal, and the release of Israeli hostages and Palestinian captives.
It's pretty much the same deal that could have been struck months before, but he always finds a way to sabotage it. So we came here to say we will not have it. We have to have the hostage deal. We have the hostages back. We have to sign the ceasefire today.
So that is Israelis even upset with this. So you got the rest of the world on heels to, pressure Netanyahu to accept a peace agreement to end up this, horrific genocide, the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, including children. It's just so horrific to see the images for over the past 2 years, just how horrific all this is. And, it'd be stupid not to accept this peace agreement. Because even Hamas knows that they're not going to, get any better deals. They're not going to get anything better. We know that Israel has many tricks up their sleeves to keep this war and violate the peace agreement and try to, jam up the works to, further facilitate their wants and wishes and desires. So, Hamas trying to make it more so or trying to pressure, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And considering the fact that, Hamas kind of knew about October 7th, they knew what the aftermath was going to be. Then it comes down to the reality that if Benjamin Netanyahu, paid Qatar to pay Hamas as a terrorist organization to take over Palestine to wreck the liberation process, a peaceful movement done by the Palestinians. They try to attack the PLO by enabling Hamas, this terrorist organization. That was through the directives of Netanyahu and his Kitz government. That if Netanyahu knew about this, then obviously Hamas knows that if they did what they did on October 7th and committed the atrocities, that the aftermath was going to be this, caliber. It was going to be an ethnic cleansing. It was going to be, taking over, Palestine, annexing the West Bank, going into Lebanon, going into Syria, furthering wars with Iran and Yemen and so many other countries. So if Netanyahu knew about that and Egypt knew about that, because Egypt gave intelligence to Israel days prior to October 7th to warn them that there could be a facilitated attack on Israel's soils done by Hamas, then Hamas knows that the October 7th attack was going to lead to this devastation. So again, people, it'd be stupid not to accept this ceasefire agreement. Not only just with the fact that it's been going on for over 2 years and we've seen the utmost atrocity that is going with Palestinian children and the damages within and just making it unlivable, which is the whole, prosperous of these bloodthirsty Zionists and their cult religion. It's not even a religion. It's really just a political philosophy. But for anyone to violate this or for anyone to, turn this down and anyone to say like, well, Hamas, they might put some. Obviously, they have no intent to really go after what the whole notion of why they wanted to, have this war or cheerleading for Israel because they wanted to release the hostages. That was what I was told by many of the pro-Israeli people that, once the hostages are freed, then everything will go back to normal. Well, here's your chance once again to have that ceasefire agreement, to have a prison transfer in a peaceful setting, to have a long-lasting peace. But of course, that's not going to live up to the terms of Netanyahu, because Netanyahu is this demonic being that will violate any law, including his own, within his own country, to keep this bloodshed going. That's what a demonic person he is. And the fact that Israelis, to the hundreds of thousands of Israelis that are protesting against him, that puts a huge amount of pressure on one person. And if Netanyahu was smart, if Netanyahu actually gave a damn about human existence, gave a damn about actually being a prime minister of Israel, would absolutely sign up to this peace agreement. You can have negotiations afterwards. You can have, peace and talks afterwards of how to, deal with Palestinians and whatnot. But if you do not make this move, then Netanyahu has no respect anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world at this point. Because all the countries have pretty much made their point of how gruesome this man is. So this really goes down to his hands, unfortunately. And we don't know for sure if it's going to follow through or not. Here is Trump in the Times of Israel saying he called Prime Minister Netanyahu after Hamas agreed to this. And Trump responded to Netanyahu because Netanyahu already confirmed that he was going to try to violate the ceasefire agreement. And Trump says, "You're always so effing negative. This is a win." Mr. Or the deal. It's a win for you guys, okay? Why are you always so negative? But that's the point. That is the point. Is that Trump is trying to negotiate this in the most, trying to be meaningful way possible. He's trying to play it to both sides and pander to both of them, because we know that Miriam Adelson definitely paid him a big fat check during his campaign, which is why he's so staunchly pro-Israel. We know that Netanyahu may have some dirt on him, so he's trying to play to that. But he also understands that, in order for his constituents and his base, who are definitely on the side of ending this war, who did not want, the genocide of Palestinians, he also wants to play to their encampment. So he's trying to play both fields to this. And for Netanyahu to, again, try to diminish this and try to come up with a scheme to violate the peace summit and agreement, it really just highlights how grotesque this man is. So I think Donald Trump is trying to put the pressure on him. I don't think Donald Trump really favors Netanyahu at this point, because he's giving him the opportunity. The ball's in his court to say, listen, you said you wanted to free the hostages. Here's another opportunity to get this done. And you'd be stupid to not accept this. You'd be stupid not to accept this. Again, you can negotiate afterwards of how Israel will still continue to control Palestine and Palestine will still be subservient to the IDF or whatnot. You could still have negotiations afterwards. But if you're not willing to make this first step to actually release all the hostages, which is what you said you're committed to, then obviously no one should have any respect for you, because you're a pathological, demonic liar out for blood of the innocents. And I have stated this before. It's not just Palestine. It's not just Palestine. They want to further exclude their militarized power, their ability to control, manipulate all across the world. Remember the Samson option? That is a legit directive from their own sources. That's a direct military objective to facilitate the bloodshed, the war, the tyranny, the rise of the supremacy of the Zionists, not Jewish people, because they are definitely different. Zionists are not Jewish. They're far different. They are far different. And this is for the Zionist persona and the supremacy of their group to exude more power for the rest of the world. So Netanyahu not agreeing to this, whether or not he does or whether or not he doesn't. If he doesn't agree to this, there's nothing left of him. There's no defense. There's no leg for him to stand on. And I think Trump knows that if he doesn't agree to this, then, all hell breaks loose. Then I'm just done with it. And, considering the fact that Netanyahu already stated that he tends to violate the peace plan hours after they made this announcement in the White House, I think Donald Trump knows that. I think Donald Trump is aware of this. As you can see here, that's the president you voted for. That's the president you got. So everything is pretty much into his hands. And the way I look at this, if you really want Netanyahu to commit to this agreement, I think you got to up the pressure, not just with trolls, not just with tweets, not just with, true social rhetoric about, look how your own people are protesting. I think really how you got to get to him is to come out and just immediately say that if you do not follow through on this peace agreement, then that's it for funding. We are going to cut off any resources, any military aid, anything in the direction of Israel ever again. That if you want to continue on this genocide, it's on your dime. It's on your pocket. I think that's the best way. That's the best motivator to get Benjamin Netanyahu. Because Benjamin Netanyahu, understand that the reason why they're able to facilitate this is because he has every other country in his hand. Every other country is bending the knee to this man. I don't know if it's because of intel. I don't know if it's because of blackmail. I don't know exactly why he has so much power and exuberance around the world. But if countries said that, hey, if you don't follow through this peace agreement, we are going to cut off the funding source for Israel, their military, and for you to keep this genocide going, I think that's the best deterrent to get Benjamin Netanyahu to realize that enough is enough. I think that's the only way we can actually see this, as the best motivator to get Benjamin Netanyahu. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. He could agree to it, but he could not agree to it. And what I'm saying is the best way to reassure that is, for the United States and its power to basically tell Netanyahu and his government that, okay, that's it. You're not getting any more funds. You're not getting any manipulation. You're not paying our, TikTok influencers. You're done. You're done. Our allyship is over. You go do your war, whatever crap you're doing. Just don't expect us to be involved. And I think if more countries did that, which I doubt they will, because of just how influential all this is, if more countries did that, it would be over now. It'd be over now. We wouldn't have to discuss it ever again. But we'll see what happens. I think this is in a good direction. I think this is good for at least having this conversation. But, there's still some bloodthirsty maniacs out there, including Bibi himself, that want to keep this war, that want to keep this genocide, that want to go full on just hell on earth to facilitate their demonic presence. They're just amplifying this agenda, this political philosophy of the Zionist death cult that they must, continue on this wage warfare on the Arab nations and the Muslim world and take over the Middle East and, how they're superior being, they're God's chosen people. That kind of sinister mindset is still facilitating within people. So we'll see where this goes. But I'm having fingers crossed, considering the fact that a lot of countries, including Israel, are protesting Netanyahu to say, take the agreement or you're a complete, utter atrocity. You're a complete demonic being. and we will no longer respect you or tolerate you in human society if you don't agree to this. So there's a lot of pressure on him. But we'll see what happens.